I'm Tim Haunn, founder and president of the Haunn Group. We're a boutique planning firm in Mississauga that does integrated wealth planning for accomplished entrepreneurs. We're here today at one of our strategic relationships, March 15. We're here with one of the partners, Milanetti, to discuss what they can do for us and our clients. March 15th's theme is basically advancing people and advancing business. From my observations, their major goal is to provide a larger return on the investment you've made. So thank you, Maria, for doing this. Much appreciated.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure.
Let's start out. Tell me a little bit about March 15.
So March 15 is a small group. We're 6 people, but we're industrial psychologists, leadership and development, and organizational development experts. And so we come from the people side of things, and we try and smooth out how leaders deal with their business and do business planning, etc. I run our family business practice, which is why I'm going to talk to you today about succession.
Great. What do you do for succession planning?
So the first thing we do is we speak to the founder or the owner of the organization, depending on whether it's a first generation or second generation family. Usually those are the kinds of businesses we deal with. And we want to know what the founder would like to do. We want to understand what their time frame is, who their key successor or successors might be, and how we can help. And usually by the time they come to us, they are willing and ready to discuss something like this. As you know, it's hard for owners of businesses to give them up, and it's very hard for them to be able to trust someone else to take the reins. And so this is a sensitive process. So we often assess founders to try and see how happy they are, what their interests are, how they've run the business in this present chapter, and then we compare that to the successors who they're considering. And in fact, we do a little bit of a deeper dive with successors, and we look at a couple of online assessments on leadership and so on. We interview them, and we often do case studies and simulations so we can understand what they're like in the workplace. And then we work with them to coach them to try and take the business over. One interesting thing is recently we've been having the founder and the successor do projects together so that they can transfer knowledge in a very conscious way. They're often transferring knowledge unconsciously or subconsciously, and this is a way for them to do it in a more aware way.
How long might this process take?
Well, the literature says the process takes 5 to 7 years, but I think the first 3 or 4 years of the process are really the person working in the business, and often it can be longer. So if a son or daughter or a nephew or niece is in the business, they're learning the basics of the business, and that's not what we help them with. What we help them with is becoming the leader that will run the business.
What are the chances of success versus failure?
Well, there's a lot of conversation about this, really. And I think they get a little disappointed when they hear how low the statistics are for the success of family business transfer. And this all comes out of some data that was produced in '87, as you know, by John Ward, who was one of the leaders in the industry at the time. He was one of the very first well-known family advisors. And he had a statistic and his statistic was that in the first generation, there's a 30% chance you can hand down the business. In the second generation, a 13% chance. And in the third generation, only a 3% chance. So those are diminishing returns. And I think it can be a little depressing. On the bright side, we have worked with third and fourth generation businesses. I'm sure you might have as well. And we find what they hand down is they hand down that steadiness, they hand down that predictability. And I think now that we've done more research in family business, we're finding that perhaps John Ward's information did need a little bit more added to it. For instance, families don't always stay in one business. They may sell the original business and go into other businesses. On average, they could start up to 5 businesses by the time 50 years goes by. And so what we're finding is that families hand down the entrepreneurial spirit. And that's a really interesting thing to try and coach them to do.
Which may lead to our last question for today. What about selling the business versus passing it down?
Well, I think it's fine to sell the business. I have listened to Tom Deans on a number of occasions, and I think if the business is at a point where it is of high worth and ready to be sold, I think it's a smart decision to sell the business. And also to ask your children or those people you're thinking of handing the business down to, whether they're interested in that business or another. I know we weren't encouraged to go into our family business, but I think what was handed down was the entrepreneurial spirit.
That's exciting. I'm glad you're out there helping them protect that entrepreneurial spirit.
Take care.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Tim.
Bye.